Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of The Hook. We got some NFL, NBA, and a little bit of the MLB in this cold November. Stay tuned. It's The Hook.
1, 2, 3, 6, 5, 6, 5, and it's your body.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Harry Hoffman alongside Jeff Barker. Jeff, how you doing today?
Doing wonderful, Hoff. How's it going?
Hey, it's going well. Well, Kobe Bryant is back in action in practice. He took the day off, getting a little bit of rest. If he comes back, which is probably likely in the next couple of weeks, how far can he take this Laker team?
I'm going to say, you mentioned playoff run. I'm going to say playoff appearance. I think they'll go and they could win a couple games in the first round, whoever they play, but they're probably not getting in at much better than a 7 or an 8 seed. But, I mean, should they tank, for a lottery pick? Definitely not, because you never know with the lottery in the NBA. It's not like the NFL where, you finish worst record, you get the best draft pick. So there's always the risk in that, and you'll never see a team led by Kobe just give up.
And I think, going into this summer of free agency, there are so many guys, Kevin Love, Carmelo Anthony. LA's obviously an attractive city. They could go out and get numerous players to help Kobe. If they could find a way to trade and get a draft pick, because obviously this draft is loaded, get a young guy who can run with Kobe and maybe a guy like Kevin Love and Pau Gasol. Nash said today that he hasn't even thought about retirement, so who knows how long he's going to be around. But I do think Kobe can take them to that next level. I know the West is pretty stacked right now, even towards the bottom. You got Dallas playing well. Houston's, the 6th or 7th seed right now. So I think the Lakers can do it. They've shown that even without Kobe, they can get the job done. Pau Gasol is playing at an extremely high level. The guys like Xavier Henry, Wesley Johnson, young guys, Kobe can come in and do what he does.
Definitely, and it seems like the only thing consistent about the NBA Western Conference this year is, well, as always, the San Antonio Spurs. So,
they're unbelievable.
I feel like the Lakers can definitely jump in there.
Yeah.
Oh, well, moving on to the NFL, Dallas visits MetLife Stadium this weekend. They're going to take on the Giants. Giants have won 4 straight. And they're right back in the playoff race now, about 2 games out. So, Hoff, if they win, who's the favorite in the NFC East?
I got to go with the Giants. I mean,
The favorite if they win this game against the Cowboys?
Of course.
Even though the Eagles are in first?
Yeah, honestly, I don't think the Eagles can barely win at home. I know they got that off their back last week, but I don't trust Michael Vick. I don't trust Chip Kelly. I don't trust that team in general.
You don't trust Michael Vick? He's not playing. Foles is playing.
I don't trust Nick Foles either. Any of their quarterbacks, I don't trust. I don't think they could get the job done. And I certainly don't trust the Cowboys. We've seen, obviously they have a ton of talent and they play up to competition sometimes. But when it comes down to it towards the end of the season in the playoff time, I'm taking the G-Men. They're the only one in that division who's proved anything over the past couple of years. Obviously the 2 Super Bowls that Eli has, I'm taking the G-Men.
I'm definitely taking the Eagles on this one. I just think, Foles, I think, can lead them to the playoffs, especially in such a weak division, the NFC least, as everyone's rightly been calling it this year. So, like I said, I think he can take them to the playoffs, but, I don't see him taking them anywhere past that. And the Giants, when you lose six straight games to start the season, I think there needs to be something.
You would think,
said
right?
About that.
But they're the only team who finds a way, and Tom Coughlin puts himself in an even deeper hole this year, and he's probably going to climb out of it like he always does. It's unreal how this team goes from so bad and not even looking at the playoffs to, looking at an NFC East division title. They win this, and they're 1 game back, and assuming what Philly does this weekend, it'll be all clumped at the top.
Yeah, I'm still not counting anyone out, not even the Redskins.
Oh, all right. Well, sticking with football, a big matchup on Sunday, Denver and New England. It's Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning. Jeff, let's get right to it. In your eyes, who is the greatest? Is it Tom Brady or is it Peyton Manning?
All right, Hoff. Came with some stats here. Did my research this time.
Okay.
I'm going Brady, and when you look at it, 2-time Super Bowl MVP. I think he's been to the Super Bowl 5 or 6 times.
5 times.
5 times. He's won 3 times. Peyton Manning, on the other hand, 1 Super Bowl MVP, 1 Super Bowl win. And I think the stat that sticks out the most is Peyton's been eliminated in his 12 playoff appearances 8 times in the first round.
Right. Yeah, and
And only 2 times in the first round for Brady.
Yeah, football is one of those sports where it's so hard to consistently be there at the end. You know, this isn't basketball. You know, baseball, you know, most of the teams at the top can get there pretty often. Football, it's such a grind the entire season. And for Tom Brady to be there every single year, 5 Super Bowl appearances, I don't think everybody realizes how great of a feat that is. Plus, the 18-0 season that he had before losing to the Giants in the Super Bowl, that was arguably the greatest regular season of all time. I mean, him and Randy Moss, probably one of the best duos in history. I mean, they put up unbelievable numbers. So yeah. I'm gonna go with Brady. The only reason I'm not going with Peyton is you mentioned the playoff appearances. He just finds ways to lose.
Yeah, I just think Peyton's the king of the regular season, and we saw it last year. He had an incredible regular season, comes in playing against Joe Flacco and the Ravens, can't get it done.
No, and especially at home. And I think, you know, Tom Brady, the 3 rings says it all. And he's this late in his career, you know, he's still getting the job done. The Patriots are going to be there for as long as he's there.
I'm going to have to agree with you on that one. Coming up next on The Hook, we're talking Texas football and taking on Texas Tech on Thanksgiving. We're talking a little Jason Kidd and Northern Illinois. We're talking playoffs in the NCAA football. Do these teams deserve to be in? Stay tuned. It's The Hook. Thanks for sticking with us tonight, folks. After an embarrassing 38-13 loss to Oklahoma State last week, the Texas Longhorn football team will retake the field at DKR on Thanksgiving against in-state rival Texas Tech. Hoff, thoughts on this matchup?
I think it's troubling for Texas. I mean, they just lost DJ Johnson for this game, suspended.
I don't really think, we're going to talk about that a little bit more later, but I don't think that's going to make a huge difference.
I know, but with the loss of Jonathan Gray, now you're really relying on Malcolm Brown. I mean, just basically putting the whole team on his back because Case McCoy in the last...
Bergeron's a good running back.
He's not bad, but, you know, Case McCoy did not look good at all against Oklahoma State. Had 3 interceptions, really wasn't on point with any of his receivers, no long touchdowns. Struggled to put points on the board, struggled to move the ball. They only had 13 points. And against good offenses like this in the Big 12, you cannot keep going 3 and out. These Big 12 offenses are just going to beat your defense up, tire you out, and put points on the board.
I mean, definitely. If it's a shootout, I think that obviously favors Texas Tech. But the Texas defense, I mean, they had a little slip up against a running quarterback in Clint Shelf last week from Oklahoma State.
Right.
But I think they're going to be fine. Baker Mayfield can run the ball, but he's not necessarily a rushing quarterback.
Right.
I mean, he can sling the ball down the field with the best of them, though, and just like all Texas Tech quarterbacks and Texas Tech offenses can. But I don't think the Longhorns should be too worried about it.
But, you know, do you worry at all? This home field advantage barely feels like a home field advantage anymore. It seems like every big game at home, Texas can't get the job done. You know, I don't know what the stat is. I think it's, you know, out of the last 18 home games, Mac Brown has lost 10 or something of that number. I mean,
either way,
it's barely, it feels like a neutral site. And as soon as Texas Tech gets going, their crowd is going to be loud and into it. I think it's trouble for the Longhorns.
I think Texas pulls it out there.
All right. Well, now on to the NBA. The Brooklyn Nets and Jason Kidd's new team are 3-8 to start the season. Jeff, is there any cause for concern in Brooklyn?
Definitely cause for concern.
Oh,
when you have that much talent and you start 3-8, kind of like the Lakers last year, and you look at it similar. And Jason Kidd, I don't understand the move to pretty much take him off the court, put him in a suit, and then put him as the head coach. That didn't make any sense.
And it's funny how he's coaching guys who he's been playing with almost his whole career. Look, Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett and Jason Terry.
They're basically his same age.
Exactly. Those guys are way up there. So now he's telling them what to do. Not to mention, Jason Kidd was on the Knicks playing against rival Brooklyn Nets last year. I mean, this is just a strange situation. You wonder late in games who he's going to give the ball to, Joe Johnson or Paul Pierce. And if they're struggling now 3-8, I mean, who do you turn to? You know, what kind of lineup changes do you get? You really going to take
some
the
injuries
stars
as well,
out?
too.
Yeah, so it'd be funny if he's just going to suit up for the Nets himself and go out there. I think this is a disaster for the Brooklyn Nets. I don't see this going anywhere the rest of the season.
You think they make a coaching change, maybe?
I don't know.
I mean, it's probably way too soon that 11 games through. But
I think so, but after the end of the year, wherever they end up, they're going to really look at this and say, is he the guy who's going to carry us to that next level? Really high expectations in Brooklyn, all over New York too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say that if they're not 500 by the All-Star break, I definitely think they should start considering a coaching change.
Yeah, do you think they do it mid-season?
Yeah, I think they could do it mid-season. I mean,
Really?
if they're not with that team, if they're not 500,
That's
I think
true.
they could do it mid-season.
All right.
I saw the Lakers almost do it.
Yeah.
So. All right, well, moving on to the BCS, and college football, Northern Illinois in particular, they're going to run the table as one of those sort of mid-major type of schools, possibly get a BCS bid. So moving on, looking at next year, do these non-BCS teams deserve a shot at the 4-team playoff?
Honestly, it depends how those teams up at the top 4 perform, whether they have, 1, maybe 2 losses and maybe an undefeated gets in. But honestly, I don't think so. I mean, we're looking at these Power 6 conferences, and obviously an SEC team, it could be 1 or even 2 of them getting the playoff. And then you got the Big 12, Big 10, Pac-12. ACC is looking so much better with Florida State and Clemson, and Miami's getting better. Duke is up there this year. I mean, it's crazy, how good these teams are, and I just don't see these mid-majors competing with them unless they've proved throughout the season that they schedule certain games that they can go out and beat these, BCS conferences. But I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to strength of schedule. When you look at Northern Illinois' schedule, the best teams that they've played, Iowa and Purdue. I mean, some of the middle of the line to bottom teams in the Big Ten this year. And then they play in the MAC. I mean, I think that says it all. They play in the MAC conference.
I couldn't tell you 3 teams that play in the MAC conference.
Hey, Miami of Ohio, man. Yeah.
I'm taking the top 4, top 5 teams in the Big 12 over Northern Illinois. I just don't. Boise State gave all these teams false hope when they were winning BCS games, and when they beat Oklahoma, everybody said, well, now you got to give them a shot every year because they've proved that they can do it. But, when you look at strength of schedule, it's obviously huge in an 11-game season. Who have you beaten? Who have you played? I don't see it happening.
Definitely. Northern Illinois went to a BCS game last year, got smoked by Florida State.
Right. Well, coming up next on The Hook, we are joined by good friends Peter Sblendorio. Stay with us. It's going to be good. It's The Hook.
We are joined now by Peter Sblendorio, TSTV's own, to talk about a little bit around the MLB. Peter, we're going to start off big news with a trade coming out of Detroit and Texas. The Rangers and Tigers agreed to terms to send Prince Fielder along with a sum of cash to the Rangers for second baseman Ian Kinsler. Who got the best of this deal?
Oh, I think the Rangers definitely got the best of the deal. Look at this. I mean, Prince Fielder is somebody who's going to come in, hit 30 home runs, drive in 100 runs, and he's going to replace Josh Hamilton, who they lost last offseason as a big lefty bat in the middle of the lineup. That's something that they've been missing, is lefty power. I mean, and Prince Fielder's swing is really tailored for the Rangers ballpark in Arlington. The short porch in right field, he's going to put up big numbers there. And in trading Kinsler, I mean, not only did they get a great player to play first base, already probably the best hitter in their lineup, but they opened up second base for Jurickson Profar. Arguably the top prospect in all of baseball. He had some flashes of being a really good player last year. I think him getting a spot in the starting lineup, getting to consistently play, is going to help him a lot. And he's somebody that can contribute right away. And I think this team is just so much better now. This might be the best infield in baseball now with Fielder, Profar, Elvis Andrus at shortstop, and Adrian Beltre at third base.
It really is. And another trade that just happened today, the Cardinals sending David Freese to the Angels for Peter Bourjos as part of a 4-player deal. I mean, what do you make this? I know you were high on David Freese.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason not to be high on David Freese. Third base is a pretty premium position. Not a lot of great hitters out there. David Freese is above average hitter at third base. He's a nice righty hitter. And I think that, it's going to be a really good pickup for the Angels. Now, I expected them to trade Bourjos for a pitcher. They really need pitching. He was a guy that I think a lot of teams would be interested in because he's so speedy and he's a really good outfielder. But what people failed to realize is that in trading Bourjos and picking up Freese, they get another righty bat to put in the middle of that lineup, somebody who can bat 5th or 6th, protect Hamilton, Pujols, and Mike Trout. And now if they want to trade Mark Trumbo, they can do that because, Freese essentially takes over his position as a righty hitter in the middle of the lineup. Trumbo is somebody who could probably get more for the Angels. If they need another pitcher, somebody who could be a 2 or 3, Trumbo is a guy who hits 30 home runs. He can hit towards 100 RBIs. I think that if they trade Trumbo, they might be able to get the pitcher they need. So in picking up Freese, they get somebody at a more important position at third base, and they make Trumbo expendable.
And now, the Angels last season going in were World Series favorites out of the AL. Now with this move, with the lineup they still have, I know it's early, but are they again one of the favorites to win the American League?
I definitely think that they should be, just because of that lineup. Like I said, Mike Trout is going to be an MVP candidate every year. Albert Pujols is a former MVP, as is Josh Hamilton. Now you add David Freese. What they really need is pitching. That bullpen was abysmal last year. If they can get 2 guys to pitch in the back end of that bullpen, that would be huge for this team. That might be an extra 5 wins right there, just getting people who can finish out games. The starting rotation is decent with Jared Weaver and C.J. Wilson, but if they're able to trade Trumbo and get a 3rd guy to put in there, then you're just looking at filling in the last 2 spots. You have a decent rotation for the playoffs. Jared Weaver's as good as they come in the American League, guys. I think that if they can trade Trumbo for a pitcher, it all comes back to that, and get some relief help. This is a team that could contend for that AL West, and once you get in the playoffs, you never know what's going to happen.
All right, good point there, Peter. Last question. We're talking a little Alex Rodriguez. He stormed out of his hearing on Wednesday, called out Bud Selig, and some have been saying that this is a defensive move from a man that's clearly guilty. But what's your take, Peter?
Well, I don't think it matters if he's guilty or not. I think he's right. Bud Selig does need to testify about this. Look at this, okay? Alex Rodriguez has never tested positive for steroids. He's never been suspended for steroids. He's admitted to using steroids from 2001 to 2003, a time where there was no penalty for using performance-enhancing drugs in baseball. So in doing that, that means if he is suspended, he deserves a suspension for 50 games. That's the penalty for a first-time offender. When I look at the other 12 guys in the biogenesis case, they did the same thing as A-Rod allegedly. They all received 50 games. So the fact that Alex Rodriguez receives 4 times that, he receives a season and a half, 211 games, I think it's a witch hunt. I think that they're upset that A-Rod's the highest earning player in baseball. They wanted him to be the clean home run king, and now it's kind of backfiring for them. It's too low risk of a system. 50 games is not enough to deter players from doing this. Bud Selig needs to be in there, and he needs to explain why he gave A-Rod so much bigger of a suspension than everybody else. So whether you like A-Rod or not, and whether you think he's guilty, I think the real problem is that his suspension is way too much. Baseball is conspiring against him is the way it seems, especially now that Bud Selig doesn't want to testify.
And I agree with you. Bud Selig has it out for Alex Rodriguez. He's trying to make his last big stand as commissioner. So I'm going to have to agree with you there. Well, thank you, Peter, for joining us. It's always great to have you on. Stay with us. Next segment is our favorite. It's the fastest 5 minutes. Stay with us. It's The Hook. It's time for our favorite segment, the fastest 5 minutes in sports. Jeff, Jack Taylor in Division III had 109 points 2 games ago. Last night had 3. What do you make of this fiasco?
I mean, when you look at the 109 points, you got to look at how many shots he took.
Yeah.
But then just to go from 109 to 3, it doesn't make any sense. It's ridiculous. And why does he feel the need to score 109 points? I mean, it's cool, but it's Division III basketball. I'm not that impressed. You do have to be impressed to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Somebody scores that many points in a game, especially in a college game. There's not a lot of time. Mm-hmm. But still, it's D3. What's Grinnell? I don't even know where that is.
All right, but he is getting his name out there. Everybody knows who Jack Taylor is in the sports world.
True.
The kid puts up unbelievable
What, is he
amount of
going to
points.
play in the NBA?
No. But I would be
Exactly.
tired. I would be tired shooting 70 shots a game. I give him credit for that. Hey, power to him.
All righty. Well, moving on. Mike Woodson, head coach of the New York Knicks, was fined $25,000 for his comments about Melo not getting superstar calls. Hoff, do you agree with these comments and the fine?
I think this is ridiculous. I mean, he doesn't have the right to just say on radio his opinion. Melo doesn't get calls, and then fining him $25,000 while players who get tons of technicals, either don't get suspended or get, $5,000, $10,000 fines. I mean, I think this is a joke.
Yeah, I think they protect the referees a little bit too much. He should be able to state his opinion. If he thinks the calls are bad, he should be able to say that, as long as he's not blatantly just disrespecting the referees or calling them out. But I kind of agree with the comments. Melo, he hasn't been getting those superstar calls that we expect.
Yeah,
we saw
of course.
James Harden at the end of the Houston game. I mean, I don't really know what that was about. That was clearly continuation.
And the
Should have
Knicks
been a
in
3-point
general,
play.
Amon Shumpert, that touchy foul on Paul George, I cannot believe they called that in MSG with the game on the line.
And if you look at all the other superstars in the NBA, you look at Kobe, LeBron, even Howard. These guys, Harden too now. These guys get so many superstar calls. You see Wade every time with his little pump fakes and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, they get all the calls. I think Melo deserves them too.
It's ridiculous. Moving on, Jabari Parker, Andrew Wiggins, and Julius Randle, star-studded kids in college. Who do you think goes number 1?
I'm still gonna have to say Andrew Wiggins, just
Okay.
with the LeBron comparisons, whether they're
right.
whether they're fair or not. I think he has the highest ceiling and the most potential.
Okay, I'm going to go Jabari Parker. I think this kid is just how big he is and how physical he is. The way he can score, it's so smooth. His jump shot, getting to the basket, getting out in transition. He's unselfish. He finds players. I mean, the kid can do it all. He has no fear. I mean, he really stepped up against Kansas. Obviously Duke didn't win, but, he's showing something that not many kids, 18, 19 years old, many kids don't have that ability.
Yeah, I mean, still pretty early to speculate
Very
with
early,
the draft
very
board.
early.
Marcus Smart looking pretty good
Yeah,
too.
yes,
So,
he is.
we'll see. But I think I could see either of these three guys that you mentioned
Definitely.
being the number one pick. All right, so DJ Johnson for the Longhorns, suspended for the Thanksgiving game. How big of a loss do you think this is?
I think it's a big loss, but in recent weeks he's been muffing punts left and right. I mean, it's unbelievable how he just can't catch a punt. And the only reason I think it's big that I mentioned before, the loss of Jonathan Gray. Now you're losing two playmakers on offense. It's just putting extra pressure on Case McCoy, Malcolm Brown, and Joe Bergeron to get the job done. So I don't really know.
I think it's definitely going to be a big loss for Longhorns, but it could be a little bit of a blessing in disguise. I think Major Applewhite has been trying to get DJ Johnson the ball for good reasons, because he's a playmaker. He's got all that speed.
Yeah.
But I think he's too predictable about it with all these bubble screens. And it seems like every time DJ is actually on the field,
Right.
the defense knows that he's getting the ball. And it's just too predictable. So I think just getting him off the field, I think, could open up some more things for some other players.
Yeah, all right, we'll see. Jerry Jones says Jason Garrett will return in 2014. You like the move?
I don't like the move. I don't really have anything against Jason Garrett. I don't really think he's, per se, a bad coach or anything. It's always hard to coach when Jerry Jones is your owner and he tries to
Exactly.
be owner, GM, coach, player,
I
everything.
honestly don't think it matters who is the coach anymore for the Cowboys. Jerry Jones runs everything, top to bottom. I honestly wonder how much say Jason Garrett even has in practice. So unless they go out and get a real powerful coach who's been there and done that, I don't really see it making a difference at all.
Alrighty, well, let's move on. A&M and LSU this weekend. If LSU wins, does this ruin Johnny Football's chance at the Heisman?
Honestly, I think his chance was already ruined. But yes, and I think LSU gets the job done. The Johnny Manziel hype will start to settle down after this LSU defense gets to him a little, and I think Jameis Winston will be the clear favorite heading into the last couple weeks of the season.
I'm going to disagree with you. I think Manziel can still win the Heisman even if they lose this game, mainly because of the sexual assault scandal going on and that
Okay.
investigation with Winston.
right.
I think, they always talk about, the Heisman guy, and obviously Manziel hasn't really lived up to what people say that sort of,
Right.
stereotype is.
Yeah.
But I think that sexual assault was
All right,
Winston
last
too much.
thing, Iron Bowl in a couple weeks, Auburn, Alabama. Who you got?
I'm picking Auburn.
All right. I'm going to take Bama. Roll Tide. That'll do it for this episode of The Hook. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter @_TheHook and tune in every Friday. Thanks for joining us. This is The Hook.